I guess it's close enough to 8 to start the meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the, well, first of all, is Moody online?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Marty. This is Keith. I'm online.
Did I hear him? Oh, okay.
Good
Can I
morning.
get a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
And a vote? Everybody say aye, who agrees? And Moody?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, the first action item is approval of design build contract, community systems ammonia removal project. Hi,
Good morning. All right, good morning. I'm Jennifer Caberline, and I'm here with two separate requests for you this morning. And the first is the design build contract for the community systems ammonia removal project. So this morning, I'll first provide a reminder on the ammonia removal regulation that's driving this project. I'll then walk you through some of the project background, the progressive design build structure, and the process itself. I'll then talk through the process that we took here at Lead and Water to select the design builder. And then I'll walk through the phase one or the design contract fee, provide some updates on the schedule moving forward, and then present the recommended motion. Okay, so some reminders on the ammonia removal regulation that is driving this project. So DEQ is preparing to issue ammonia discharge limits for surface water discharging wastewater treatment facilities. And so the purpose of this regulation is really to protect declining populations of aquatic species such as mussels and early life stage fish. And this regulation applies to 5 of our community systems wastewater treatment plants and requires action at 5 of our community systems wastewater treatment plants. So that's the St. Louis, Waterford, Elysian Heights, Aldi, and Raspberry Falls wastewater treatment plants. And so just a side note, this regulation technically applies to Broad Run, as Broad Run is a surface water discharging facility. However, Broad Run currently exceeds the requirements of this regulation. So while the regulation technically applies, no action is currently required at Broad Run as a result of this regulation. So again, it applies to 5 of our community systems wastewater facilities, and the regulations will be rolled out for these facilities starting with the 2023 permit renewals. So these facilities are all on different schedules for permit renewals. And so with the next round of permit renewals, we understand that these regulations will be imposed, and from that time, we have 5 years to comply with them. 5 years, that's correct. And so the first 3 facilities that are affected by the regulation with that have the next round of permit renewals are St. Louis, Waterford, and Elysian Heights. So we've bundled these 3 facilities into a single project that will be delivered via progressive design build. And in terms of the scope of the improvements at these facilities in order to comply with the regulations, you can see from the photos here, it's a little small, but at Waterford and St. Louis, those are existing lagoon treatment systems. And so in order to comply with the regulation, we're planning to construct new package treatment plants on the existing sites and decommission the existing lagoons. At Elysian Heights, that's currently a package treatment plant. And so there's modifications required to the process mechanical equipment. Some additional process mechanical equipment is required, but the improvements there are relatively minor compared to Waterford and St. Louis. And just to provide some context regarding the magnitude of these upgrades. So in our 10-year CIP, we're carrying a construction cost of $25 million, and that covers all 3 of these facilities. Okay, so this is not the first time that we have been to the CIP committee requesting action on this project. So back in 2020, we requested a task order for a study, and that was done to determine really what's required at these facilities in order to upgrade them to comply with the regulations. We then conducted a small delivery evaluation to determine the best way to deliver these improvements. So we first figured out what needs to be done, then we figured out the best way to bring them forward. And then we came to the board early 2022 to request resolution for the use of progressive design build for these projects, because that project delivery evaluation that was done, what came out of that was that progressive design build is really the optimal way to deliver this project. So we approached the board requesting a resolution for use of progressive design build. Since that time, we have been working through the design builder selection process and development of the contract for the progressive design build project. And we are therefore here today requesting the design build contract. There we go. For the selected design builder. So just a reminder on the progressive design build structure and how it varies from how we typically carry out projects here at Loud and Water, and that's through the design bid build method. And I know we're all familiar with it, but just in summary, with a traditional design bid build project, we issue professional services contract to an engineer. The engineer is responsible for designing the project. We bid that project out, and that is awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. And we then issue a contract to the contractor to actually build the project. So we issue two separate contracts. The first is to the engineer, and the second one is to the contractor. And just by the way design bid build is structured, there's no interaction between the engineer and the contractor until the project is awarded and construction begins. With design build, it's a bit different in that we have a single contract with a single design build entity that is responsible for both the design or the engineering and the construction of the project. So that is the contract that we are requesting approval for today, that single design build contract. And then a couple other notes on the progressive design build structure. So the design build entity, it may be a single firm that has the capability of conducting both the design and the construction. It may be a partnership between two entities. So that's why that dashed line is shown right here to show the potential for a contractual relationship there. But we don't have any involvement in that contractual relationship. So as far as we're concerned, that design builder is a single entity working on our behalf to both engineer and construct the project. Also a component of progressive design build is the professional advisor. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but typically, progressive design build is an alternative method of project delivery. And so professional advisors are really very typical, especially for owners such as Loud and Water, where this is the first time that we are doing a large scale progressive design build project. So we've had a professional advisor on board throughout the project process thus far. And, again, we'll be requesting professional advisor contracts as part of the next request this morning. But in summary here, the progressive design build structure, there's a single contract with a single entity that's responsible for both design and construction of the project. And so the last time that we were here requesting the use of progressive design build, we identified 3 key benefits of the progressive design build structure to the project and to Loud and Water. And those are a streamlined path for permit compliance, cost management and control, and consistency in design, construction, and operations. And so I think we're all familiar with the current market conditions right now. It takes a long time to get things, and we never know how much they're going to cost. So with the design build structure, you have the designer and the contractor working together from the beginning. And so they can identify materials and equipment that has, typically a long lead time, long procurement time. So they can identify those early in the project. They can work with us to make selections on equipment. And then those equipment and materials can be procured early in the process so that they are available when needed in construction. And so that really helps to mitigate any issues with long lead times of equipment and the effects that it has on schedule. Similarly, having the designer and the builder work together from the onset of the project helps with that cost control and management. So the contractor has access to real-time information regarding costs. And so when they work with the designer and with us, it really helps it helps them to manage the cost, the design build entity to manage the costs so that the project is designed within the budget that we have available for the project. So we can make decisions for design that will ultimately affect the bottom line cost. So that's, another key benefit. And that also has benefits to the schedule and streamlining the project so that costs aren't holding up the schedule for the project in general. And then that third point, consistency in design and construction and operations, that's really just a function of having the 3 plants bundled into a single project. So we get some economy of scale with having the same designer and contractor working through the design and the construction. We get the economy of scale there. And then also it ultimately benefits our end users with our operations team and maintenance team to have a lot of consistency in terms of the design and the facilities that we have available. So those were the three benefits that we had identified for use of progressive design build.
One question.
Yes, sir.
The contract that we have with this entity, is it a joint contract or is the designer a sub to the construction?
So with the contract that we have, so I'll get into the whole design builder selection process in a bit, but the design build team that we selected, there is a prime and then they have a contract with the sub for the designer.
So Clark is the prime.
And Dewberry is a sub. Mhm. Yeah, that's our understanding. It's a joint, it's a partnership, but Clark is the prime.
Jennifer, Mr. Moody has a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, hi Jennifer. Just for clarification, with the progressive design build model, if I'm not mistaken, when they're doing the design, the contractors, but when they're doing the build portion, they're putting forth their estimates. It's not competitive process. It's determined that you're going to negotiate that cost with the same vendor. So you're not throwing out for other bidders to drive down costs. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And so let me kind of get into the whole.
Yeah, because I have questions about, because with the lack of competitive process, are you concerned about the cost? And perhaps you have other estimates to know that the costs are not going to be overly inflated by the vendor, knowing that there's no competition that they're dealing with.
Yeah, so there is some competition during the phase 2 of the project, which is the construction phase of the project, where the contractor portion of the design build entity, they actually bid out certain packages. Like for example, electrical is a sub package that's typically bid out. So they can self-perform some of the work, but really everything in order to maintain that competition is bid against the market. So even in cases where they're planning to conduct their own work, they have to bid it against the market. And then we have the opportunity to review bids and make our selection based on the best value. So that's how it works. So that helps to kind of maintain that level of competitiveness. So during the phase 1 or the design portion of the project, they're providing us the cost estimates and the information that they have available from recent projects. But really when it comes down to it, they're going to bid everything out against the market to ensure that we get the best value for the certain, packages within the construction.
Okay, so you're able to see when they farm out their bids or farm out their solicitations, you're able to see the responses, get a sense of what the market's bearing for the individual work packages.
That's correct. And we're
Okay,
ultimately involved in the selection.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so in general, with the progressive design build process. The progressive design build comprised of two separate phases. So during phase one, the primary focus is design, and during phase two, the primary focus is construction. And so, as I mentioned, we're here today to request the progressive design build contract for the project overall. And that contract includes the phase one fee only. And so, as Mr. Moody was mentioning, as we get through phase one, we'll work with the design builder to ultimately develop a completion stage price and negotiate a completion stage price for phase two. So that's ultimately the fee that we will pay for phase two. Prior to entering into phase two, once we're done with those negotiations, we'll be back to the board requesting an amendment to this progressive design build contract to include those phase two fees. So right now, just to clarify, that initial progressive design build contract, that includes the phase one or the design fees and some other items that we'll get into in just a minute only. So the progressive design build contract does not include phase two yet. Within phase one, I mentioned one of the key benefits of implementing progressive design build is the ability to issue early work packages and to procure equipment early. So we anticipate that during the phase one stage, we'll likely be back requesting an early work package or some early equipment procurement. But right now we understand definitely this request today and then the amendment before moving into the second phase. Any questions? Okay, so I do want to take a step back and walk through the design builder selection process, which is the first little block there on the process. And this is the process that we took in order to select the design builder that we're recommending today. And the selection process was done in accordance with Loud and Water's procurement policy, which provides some very detailed steps for securing a design builder and making that selection. So it was done with an evaluation committee, and the evaluation committee was really responsible for developing the evaluation criteria that was used in the selection, for evaluating all the SOQs, proposals, the interviews, and we had representation from across Loud and Water. So we had members from operations, from engineering, from procurement, and we also had our professional advisor on board. So our professional advisor was really tasked with guiding us through the whole selection process from an objective perspective. They're external to Loud and Water, so they really helped guide us through the selection process. They also were responsible for drafting the RFQ, the RFP, and all of the contract documents. And so the selection process was done in two separate steps. The first one was the pre-qualification and shortlist step. And so as part of the pre-qualification, we received 4 statements of qualifications from potential offers, and we qualified 3 and shortlisted 3 of those qualified offers. Those 3 offers were then issued the request for proposals. And so I just want to mention that our procurement policy requires for design build projects that we request both a technical proposal and a cost proposal from our shortlisted offers. And that really allows us to make a best value selection for our design builder. And so we received both the technical proposals and the cost proposals. And we first scored those technical proposals based on the the criteria that's listed on those first 3. So like the qualifications based criteria. And then we opened up the cost proposals, and the cost proposals were scored just based on a predetermined formula. Just a couple notes on those cost proposals. We provided the offers with a pretty detailed scope of work for phase 1. And so that really helped to ensure that the cost proposals that we received were similar in terms of what they were, basically bidding against. And then also the other point with the cost proposals, I'm sorry, I forget what I was going to say with that. But ultimately, we opened the cost proposals, and then that helped to inform us of the highest selecting offer. And the A highest selecting offer that we ultimately selected and are recommending for award is Clark Construction in conjunction with Dewberry. And so Mr. Sultan asked a question about who's the prime and who's the sub. And so the Clark Construction is the prime on the contract. So we'll be recommending award of the contract to Clark, and Dewberry is the engineer on the project. So, question?
Yeah, just a question here. So in terms of the cost proposal and the technical proposal,
Mhm.
what are some of the criterias that we use based on the procurement policy? So the procurement policy does state that we have a cost proposal and technical proposal.
Mhm.
I was just interested, and we can have a conversation on the side of this too, because everybody here is, knows about this, definitely on your side, right? I was just interested to know that what are the criteria that we use, just not assuming, because I know what the cost proposal criteria is and what's the technical proposal criteria.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to also understand, making a decision on the board. And what are the criteria that we use for them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, the criteria for the cost proposal, so we just requested the phase one cost proposals from the offers. And that was actually the scoring there that was ultimately used in the selection was just based on a predetermined formula that we set at the outset.
Okay.
So the lowest scoring, I'm sorry, so the offer that provided the lowest cost received the highest score. And then from there, the other scores were based on just a ratio of that, so that the cost was really an objective component of the selection. And the evaluation committee, we did not have an opportunity to look at the costs before they were scored. So the costs were really based on, we provided each of the offers a scope that outlines what we're looking for phase one. They provided their cost to conduct that work. And then the lowest scoring cost was assigned the highest score. And then the other costs that we received were assigned lower scores just based on a predetermined formula.
Just one more question here. So was the cost-effective metrics used then to base this on? Like what sort of a cost metric did we use?
So it was
Cost-effective metrics, cost-benefit metrics, cost-benefit analysis metrics. Which one did you use?
so
Mr. Sakara, I really believe it just came down to the estimated cost to do the design work for phase one. It was really just the line was drawn at that. Each offer's estimated cost.
But in terms of cost effectiveness, the table on the bottom right, only 60 points of our evaluation went to cost. We also got to evaluate the other components. And so project understanding and approach is very heavily weighted because we wanted to make sure that we were confident in their abilities. So it was a combined qualification based, right? Are they qualified to do the job with the cost? And those points were how we weighted cost effectiveness, because the lowest cost might not win if they didn't put in a good proposal that showed they really understood the project. So we were able to balance both. And that's the table on the right is showing you how we weighted benefit versus cost.
Okay, no, thanks, Kendra. I appreciate that. I was just trying to understand the criteria that we use to do these proposals.
Well, and this one is completely unique. It's really the first time that we've used this approach. And what we felt was important for the board is our procurement policy dictated this approach. So while it's unique, we had to do it this way.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting.
Yeah.
And Jen used the term best value earlier. I think that
Yeah.
really encapsulates it well.
Yeah, so I've seen proposals like that a few times. So I always look at the metrics, having a knowledge-based understanding. So that's why I wanted to understand the metrics. And yeah, you're right. I'm sitting on the board. You would agree that this is the first time that we're seeing the breakdown of this kind of a process that we're using. So yeah, I just wanted to understand the metrics. That's all. And we can talk about that later after this too. But thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kendra.
I do,
I probably, oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I probably missed it, but Clark and Dewberry are of course known quantities, but
Yes, they are.
I didn't hear anything about the financial viability of the companies, their financial background. Is that done in the first phase or when is that actually looked at, or is it looked at?
It is, and we did request information to ensure that they are financially viable to carry out. the project. So we have estimated
I figured you
costs.
did.
Yes. So that was all required information that they submit as part of their proposals. And we did review that in detail. We had our procurement department review that in detail.
I mean, Clark and Dewberry. You gotta know them.
Yes.
Okay. what did you-
So if you'd indulge me and go back a couple of slides to
Yes,
the traditional versus progressive design build, that one. When I was looking at this the other day, this is exciting, a different way of doing business. And I think there are a lot of advantages. I just like we were talking, I haven't seen us do this before and our policy allows it. This is a real, and everybody here seems to have a better handle on it than I do. I had to look up some things, some procurement policy and stuff. And it's, I do like this a lot, and it's really not a question. It's more of a statement.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you for putting this slide. Yeah, I'm an image guy, and this puts it all together. So thank you.
Great. You're welcome. Yeah, these are actually Design Build Institute of America
Oh,
figures. So they're used pretty commonly in communicating the design
Yeah,
build
They
structure.
look real familiar.
But yes, we are very excited to take on this project.
Jennifer, Mr.
Yeah.
Moody has a question.
Yes, Mr. Moody.
Yes, hi, Jennifer. One of the things that just came to mind, because we're using this new approach of the progressive design build, just curious in terms of exploring, we're getting an estimate for the design phase of the first phase. Just curious, because we're selecting a vendor a contract's going to cover the design and build, do we get any insight into their approach or their anticipated costs for the build phase? I'm just curious if that's something that could be explored, or is that just something that do you not think the contractors or vendors would not be willing to entertain giving some type of estimate for that build? And it may not be possible, I'm just curious, but we are moving forward in a relationship with a partner to do a design build. And this is more for future interactions or future leveraging of this approach. Do you have any insights or thoughts on that?
So just to make sure I understand your question correctly, so you're asking the level of understanding of costs that we'll have during the design, like what information they'll be willing to share, or just in the future?
Yeah, because one of the things in this approach, you're selecting a vendor that's going to cover you through both phases, design and build. So we're getting an estimate for the design component, phase one, but for the phase two, the build, and I know it's hard to do that before you've done the design. But what are we getting a sense of for them to consider them for the design and build? What information are we getting in terms of maybe it's just their approach or some preliminary estimates based on their knowledge of our requirement? So that because we're awarding them or basically giving them the design and build phase of the project. Just curious if how that's being factored in, that build component when we're making the award.
Yeah, so the build component is really primarily the qualifications based selection. And as we move through, phase one, that's really when we're going to gain further understanding of cost. As I mentioned, we have a professional advisor on board, and our professional advisor they actually have a construction group. So we work with Black and Beach during the selection process, and they actually have a construction group. So at the onset of the project, we had them do an updated cost estimate, and that's where we have the 25 million order of magnitude cost from them. So we, Clark understands what our budget is now. As we work through phase one of the project, we'll have some more clarity in working with them. But really the selection for phase two was primarily qualifications based. They have a lot of experience in the region. They're working with us on the Milestone Reservoir project and the CMAR. So, we have,
Okay.
we have some experience with working with them, and they are able to demonstrate successful delivery of progressive design build projects for other clients.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, I was gonna mention the off ramp too.
So
Yeah.
just to clarify, when you're saying when they're providing the SOQs, you're getting a good sense. And with this kind of company, you have prior history, but just in general, I'm not really referring to this scenario. I'm just thinking for future scenarios, the SOQs they're providing, and that's what's helping you determine it. I was just wondering if there's any way to explore getting some information for the build component in advance, but I don't know if that's possible because I know I probably would not want to commit to any estimates without having done design or getting a better sense of design. So I understand that being a limitation or a challenge for the vendor,
Yeah.
for the guys
I-
themselves.
I think that is the challenge, Mr. Moody,
Yes.
but I think it's absolutely something that we can explore for future procurements. But I just wanted to accentuate what Jen was saying with, I think what is exciting for us about this process is it becomes, a very agile process working through phase one, where we're getting incremental cost estimates and updates, and we're able to actively participate with sort of massaging the project and making decisions that can affect the cost of construction in the phase two contract, and really kind of value engineer the project on the fly, which is something we can't do well with design bid build. So it's something that I'm excited for about this project and our ability to do that. So
Yeah.
hope that helps.
But I do want to add that they don't have the ability to say the project costs what it costs, and Loud and Water just has to pay that, right? I think that's part of the concern. How do we know that they're just not going to charge us whatever they want? So we do have their bids against the market to watch, but if the contract allows, if we can't come to an agreement on price, we can exit the contract, right? So they just don't have the ability to control costs completely. We can step out and say, we can't come to agreement on costs. We're not proceeding any further. So I think that gives us that extra level of security that they don't have all the control over costs.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. That's good to know. I wasn't quite sure how that would work, what type of control mechanism we would have in place to work with them if there's a disagreement, or if costs just seem absurd or out of the market range.
And that's really where we like that professional advisor too, to really help us balance, is this a reasonable price right now? Because as Jen mentioned, the market is unpredictable. So we need that extra layer of advice as we go through these negotiations.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So I'm going to talk through the fee for phase one. So as I mentioned, Clark submitted a cost proposal to conduct the phase one work, and it's all laid out, broken down onto the slide here. Their phase one fee amounts to $3.4 million. And I just want to make a couple points on the fee here. So that fee is roughly 12% of the anticipated overall costs for the project that we're carrying in the 10-year CIP. So that includes phase one, phase two, it includes professional advisor services. So we anticipate that to be about 12%. With our typical professional services contracts where we have engineering, we'd like to look at that as a percentage of the projected construction costs. But that's really a challenge here, because with phase one, we have all of these specific progressive design build elements that we don't have in a typical engineering contract. And those are all listed out here. So yes, we have the design to 90%, and that includes design of 3 treatment plants. So just, keeping that in mind, that this project includes 3 separate treatment plants. So that includes the design. There's some economy of scale in there, but then that also includes those constructability reviews. So having the designer and the contractor work together, the contractor could really provide the insight into the constructability. So we have those constructability reviews. We have a lot of workshops to review that. Then there's also the detailed cost estimating and cost management. The schedule development, having, again, the contractor working together with the engineer that develop some very detailed schedules. And then really these specific progressive design build elements. I mentioned previously that one of the benefits is the ability to issue early work packages and early equipment procurement packages. And so the phase one fee actually includes the development of those packages, and then as well as the development and negotiation of that completion stage price. So that completion stage price, again, is the phase two price. So there's a decent amount of work that goes into actually developing that, negotiating that, and really working with us. So that 12%, it seems accurate considering the level of effort that's included in phase one and the fact that those elements will really benefit us long-term throughout the project. So having those early work packages and an understanding of the cost and cost management, those are intended for us to realize the full benefits of progressive design build throughout the life of the project. Additionally, because of the way that the procurement worked, we had the opportunity to look at costs from other offers and compare this cost to other offers. And this cost was very much in line with what we saw from the other offers. So that really helped us to build confidence in what we're seeing, because again, this is our first project. So that really helped us to understand that this cost is reasonable and to be expected. We have our professional advisor on board who has experience with progressive design build. They were able to look at other projects and see how phase one lines up with the overall anticipated costs. And this is also in line with what they have seen on other projects as well. So that again helps to reiterate that what we are seeing for the phase one cost is in fact reasonable. One other thing I want to mention is that the phase one fee is structured as hourly not to exceed. So this is very similar. It's actually exactly how we carry out our typical professional services contracts for engineering, where we compensate for the work that is done. So I just want to mention with these, with things like the early work packages and the completion stage price development, we've built some flexibility into the scope to allow us to really leverage and maximize the benefits of progressive design build. So we have multiple work packages built in there. We have multiple completion stage price development packages built in there. If we determine that we only need one early work package, we only need one completion stage price, which is kind of the route we're going now, then we only spend the amount that we pay for those. So there is an opportunity for us to realize some savings and costs during the phase one. So again, this fee structure is hourly not to exceed. We pay for the work that is done. So any questions on the fee?
It sounds like you've built in some flexibility in case you run into challenges at one of the three sites or more than one of the three sites, which Murphy tends to follow us around.
Yes. Okay, no questions? Move on to the schedule moving forward. So today we have the request for the design build contract to Clark. We anticipate that phase one will run, roughly from this time until mid 2025, and that's the time frame when we anticipate to be back requesting an amendment for phase two services to the progressive design build contract. As I mentioned, within that time period, we expect to also be back requesting early work package or early materials procurement. Right now, that's projected around quarter three of 2024, so potential for that as well. So those are the next steps moving forward.
Do you expect any supply chain challenges?
It's so given the current market right now, I think that we are set up to manage the supply chain issues that we are seeing right now. And it's really, we have confidence in our design builder that they will be able to identify what equipment and materials are really challenging to procure right now that have, long lead times. I think we're seeing a lot of issues with electrical, right? So they can really help us initially to make selections for those types of equipment. And they've already, identified to us what those types of equipment might be. They've built into their schedule, okay, these are the decisions that we need to make initially so that we don't run into supply chain issues in the future. So I think that we're set up to manage some of the potential issues that we might run into with supply chain.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It always seems to take longer than you think it's gonna take,
Yes.
doesn't it? You know, mid-2025. I know it's mid-2023 or late
Mhm.
2023.
And so just a snapshot of the CIP project. So this project is covered under COM 76. Reminder on the project driver, it's for compliance with the forthcoming DEQ ammonia removal regulations. In the 10-year CIP budget, we're currently carrying $27.3 million for design, construction, and professional advisor services. So it's just the CIP project snapshot for this one. And then the recommended motion. Any questions?
I have a. What's that? No, before we read the motion, I had a thought that because of the unique nature of this project, that we go for the action item
Then consent?
rather than consent. What do the members think? Agree?
I think it'd be good to have, because this is a new process that the rest of the board may be very
I think
interested in
the
knowing
rest
about
of
the process.
I mean, this is an excellent presentation, but I think the rest of the board's gonna wanna hear.
And Marty, I'm happy to make the motion if you like.
You wanna read the
I
motion?
will read it. Yep, yep. I'm going to read the recommended motion. I move that the board authorize the general manager to execute a progressive design build contract with Clark Construction Group LLC for the Community Systems Ammonia Removal Project with a phase one fee not to exceed the cost of $3,484,000 and authorize an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for an authorized budget ceiling not to exceed of $3,620,400 without further board approval.
You said, what did you say the cost? I thought you said 3 million. I don't know if you gave the right number for that.
$3,620,400 and no cents.
I'll second that motion. Get a vote? Everybody who
No discussion.
agrees, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. What's that?
Is Terry on?
Terry's online too,
Okay.
but he's not a member of
No,
this
he's
committee,
not.
even though he's the big honcho. Can we now go to the second item, which is contract with a professional advisor for this project?
Okay, so the second request that we have is for professional advisor services for phase one of the progressive design build project. So I've already gone through a lot of the background on the project and progressive design build itself, so I'll just focus in on the roles and the benefits of having a professional advisor on board, talk through the proposed scope and fee for the professional advisor, and then provide the recommended motion. So back to the lovely graphic that helps to demonstrate the progressive design build process and structure. And so as I mentioned, it's very typical on a progressive design build project where an owner is taking on their first progressive design build project to employ the services of a professional advisor. And you can see in the little puzzle piece there, the advisor is really part of the owner. And as the name implies, the advisor is tasked with guiding, with advising, and with really advocating on behalf of the owner to ensure that, you know, at Land and Water, we maximize the benefits of the progressive design build project in the process. And so, you know, as I mentioned previously, we've been working with Black & Veatch. They were our professional advisor through the selection of the design build process. They have extensive experience in progressive design build on both the professional advisor role and as a design builder themselves. So they're really able to draw a lot of the experiences that they have from other projects, and again, really advocate for us and kind of fill in the areas where we still need to gain experience with progressive design build. And so, you know, the benefits of having a professional advisor on board, I think I mentioned some of these, but really, you know, they'll really advise us on challenges and and help us manage risks and anticipate and make decisions related to the project. So there's still a few decisions that we need to make in terms of moving forward with the progressive design build project. And so having our professional advisor on board, they'll help advise us really, the way to go with some of those decisions. Again, they can draw on the resources that they have available from other progressive design build projects. And, something that's unique about Black & Veatch, I mentioned they have both the design professionals and then they also have a construction arm. So they can really draw on their understanding of market conditions to ensure that we are getting the most out of our cost management. So they can really advocate on behalf of us in terms of the cost management, and they can weigh in on the cost estimates that we are receiving during phase one to ensure that we, gain that maximum benefit of the cost management component of progressive design build. Again, they have a lot of experience with developing those early work packages and completion stage price packages. They can help us with negotiating with the design builder for the completion stage price, which is essentially that phase two price, and then assist us in negotiating the phase two contract amendment. I mentioned before that Black & Veatch, they've actually been involved with the project at the onset. They did the initial study to determine what's required at each of the facilities to comply with the regulation. They helped us through selecting the design build process, and then they've helped us in selecting the design builder. So they have a lot of institutional knowledge of the project itself, in addition to progressive design build. So the fee that we've negotiated with Black & Veatch for their professional advisor services for phase one is laid out on the slide, and it totals $379,000. And really, in order for Black & Veatch to properly advise us through the project, they really need to be involved in a lot of the meetings, and really all of the meetings and the discussions that we have with the design builder. So a portion of their fee here is really to attend all the meetings, review the deliverables, make sure that they're really up to speed on the project and the technical components of the project. But really their fee is focused in on assisting us with those specific elements of progressive design build that we don't have the experience. So, with assisting us with that cost management, again, with the early work packages, phase two negotiations, and, really providing a lot of input again, on cost management, constructability, and schedule. So they can really draw from their construction arm to ensure that we're getting the most and being the most productive during phase one. So I won't get too much into the fee in detail, but are there any specific questions regarding the fee that we have presented here?
I just one, this is all fee-based, hourly
Yes,
fee-based.
that's correct. And this is under an existing BOA contract that we have with Black & Veatch. So this would be a new task order for Black & Veatch under our BOA contract. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? And that also falls under the COM 76 10-year CIP budget as well. Okay, with that, I have the recommended motion.
I'll read the motion. I move the board approve a task order for Community Systems Ammonia Removal Project Phase 1, professional advisor services to Black & Veatch for an estimated cost of $379,400 with 10% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $417,340. Additional costs will require board approval, and I assume that since we're going to go action item for the other item, we'll go action for this one too. And I have a vote for everybody in favor.
Second.
Aye.
Pete,
Yes, aye.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting.
very clear. Even I understand what's going on. Okay, we have the construction quarterly report.
Sam's gonna start off. Hopefully this will be just as easy to follow here. Morning, everyone. This will be the capital construction report for the second quarter of 2023. To start us off, as we've done for a few of these now, we will get into some project status snapshots, sort of some highlights of some of the projects that are either ongoing on the construction phase or have just started construction during the quarter we're reporting on here. So we'll get into those projects before I hand it over to Rick for a more robust update on the expansion project for Broad Run, and then we will get into some figures on quarterly numbers on changes, percent spent, and time elapsed on the projects that we are reporting on and tracking on this report. Start us off, we'll get into Goose Creek Industrial Park sewage pump station in Forest Main. This one was awarded to Archer Western back in April and NTP'd or received notice to proceed shortly after. We are just starting to get into the procurement of materials, some geotechnical work, pulling permits and mobilization at the moment. And then, that sort of paves the way for some site work and start of the construction of the pump station, as well as the construction of the Forest Main on its way to North Lower Sigalin pump station over at the Trap Rock facility. On Paragon Park, this one was actually awarded to CPP back in October of 2022. It was a little slower to ramp up, but I think the contractor really wanted to have all materials delivered and on site before they started with the excavation work, so they could avoid multiple mobilizations to the project. And so, with the market being somewhat unpredictable, we didn't quite know how long that was going to take, but we're pleased to report that excavation work has now started. We've actually right now gotten to we've completed the full excavation and gotten to the point where we're starting to build up the structure as well. So that's pretty much some of the remaining work that we've got: construction of the vault itself, installation of all the piping and controls equipment, and that'll lead us to startup. This one is a little bit further along. This is the Reservoir Park at Beaver Dam on a partnership with Nova Parks. As you all know, this was awarded to Meridian Construction back in July. And as you can see from the picture, we've really achieved completion of most of the in-reservoir or shoreside work on this project, which is sort of one of the more unique features of the project here. Pier, bridge, foundations, and framing, and we'll get into some more pictures of that in the next slide here. That's completed. So I would say probably about half of the site work on the project is also completed, making good progress. And a lot of the building concrete and structural steel, if you were to visit the park, right now you'd see that it's all, coming out of the ground nicely and complete at this point. Still have a little bit of work on the floating docks and the boardwalks, but it's also right now sort of starting to get underway there. And here's some of the project highlights. You'll see at the top right of the screen, that's some asphalt for the parking lot, and pavement for Water Vista Drive leading to that site.
That's a good question.
Yes, go
Are
ahead.
we making any effort to keep the local community updated on progress? There was a lot of interest.
Yes, I believe there's a posting in our website right now that gets into a little bit of information on what the plan is and what the future facilities will provide, as well as some estimates for when completion of the project should be
So
expected.
you're doing it through the website.
There may be other efforts I'm not aware of. I don't know if Alton wants to chime in, but as far as what I am tracking, yes, we have that website posting, and I believe Nova Parks has separate outreach that they're coordinating on with us, that they're conducting, but I couldn't tell you right now to what extent. I will have to get back to you on that info.
I'm just saying we should have some contact with, but the website's good.
Any other questions before I proceed? So on the bottom left, you'll see that bridge actually spans across the reservoir. Obviously, it's drained right now to accommodate construction, but once it's full, you'll be able to travel from one shoreline to the other. And then there's trails that sort of land in those spots. And at the bottom right corner, you see the cruise storage facility, which has now been poured, framed, and it's well underway, and some of the other short side features there.
So I haven't been there for a while. Is there an inflow of public right now? Like, do we get people coming in or?
No, ma'am, we've pretty much closed it off to the public at this point, and one of the bits of outreach that we've done is sort of advise them to really stay away and not, use of the reservoir itself for kayaking and things like
Yeah.
that is not allowed at this point. Now, I will report that inevitably some people have a harder time following guidelines and direction. And so we have had the odd person here and there
Mhm.
that at least gets to me as a
Yeah.
report, but it's somewhat infrequent from what I hear.
Yeah, the reason why I asked was obviously because it's summer, so more people will want to come in. And we once, I think I was just newly on the board, we once had an incident with, remember Carla? Yeah, we did. I could never forget that. So, yeah, that's why I was asking, and it was based on what Marty had just
Well,
asked about.
I think the
public.
clear distinction there, and Sam talked about it, but there's the reservoir itself, which there are the additional access points that historically have been used, Mount Hope Road, Reservoir Road. Those are closed down because of the level of the reservoir. At some point when the reservoir comes back to level.
Yeah.
That would be, and that continues to be managed, that access, public access and managing that is Nova Park's responsibility. They're doing that. The park during construction is clearly closed off to the public, so.
And on a related note, we've reached the milestone within the project whereby we're able to begin the process of refilling the reservoir. It has just been extremely dry, as you
Mhm.
all well know. So,
Yeah,
we'll be on the road to refill these next stretch of months,
yeah.
aiming toward the opening.
And yeah, and just a quick follow-up on Mr. Sultan's question around the reaching out. I mean, there are a number of different, we have a couple of supervisors that have been very interested, the district supervisor. We've been continuing to share with their office. They include in their newsletter. Brambleton is so close, that HOA, we're always in contact. They have our information. So there's a number of channels. In fact, we heard from one of the local, the Burn, one of the local publications. And, we're sharing information with them that we're sharing with everybody, what's on the website, a few photos, which we shared over the last couple of months with you all. Just to make sure that everybody's understanding the progress. And it's been, while the reservoir has been closed because of the level it's at, we're making sure everybody understands the whole point of that. It's all in anticipation of getting this project done and really getting open. And that's the good news. And that's what we've been making sure we're sharing and on the same page with Nova Parks. And they're sharing the same message, as they're putting stuff out on their website as well.
So, Mark, hypothetically, like if somebody was to drive over there, okay, I'm just gonna go there today, right? And if they're just driving over there, is there like a signage or something to tell people so they can kind of like turn around and, go, okay, I'm not gonna go there because obviously I see the sign. Because not everybody reads the website.
Yes.
So.
Yes, well, and there are gates at the Reservoir Road and Mount Hope Road, so they can't go past that. There's signs. At the project site, there's a presence, with the contractor, with our inspectors, and we've been staying in touch with them to make sure there aren't just sort of random people coming in there, and they've been paying attention to that.
Is there like an anticipation when we're gonna be done with this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, right now the project is tracking on schedule for completion in the next spring.
Okay.
So spring of 2024. We've given the contractor every opportunity to revisit that forecast with us, and they've held steady so far in anticipating that date of completion.
Yeah, 2 years ago, we had a lot of discussion on this boardroom about this project. So yeah, guys,
Yeah.
thank you.
I was a
Great
part
to
of that.
see it coming to life. I mean, it's amazing.
So I think that's all I had. I'll pass it over to Rick for an update on booster pump at Selma and then Broad Run.
All right, so over at the Selma Booster Pump Station here, we are about 2/3 spent with our contract value for the installation of these low flow pumps here. And through the second quarter, we continued with the mechanical work, pump installations and process piping, and then just got started on some of the electrical work. And looking forward or looking ahead, we've got the variable frequency drives to install and then start up and commissioning and close out. So we're definitely in the second half of this project here. And now I'm going to switch over to the Broad Run Phase 2 expansion and talk through that one in a little bit more detail here. So here's our key information, our key statistics for the Broad Run expansion. Couple things to note is our change order total is up to $2 million through the end of the second quarter, and that is with the addition of the 12th change order that we've executed here just at the end of the second quarter. The value of work through the end of the second quarter is about $64.4 million, which puts us at 83% spent. And then if you, the percentage of time elapsed based on final completion, which is scheduled for August 2024, is 72%. If you look at the time elapsed based on substantial completion, which is February of next year, it's 82% on the time elapsed. And then our schedule performance index is the contractor's still tracking pretty well with their planned expenditures versus what they're earning. And then I don't want to forget, amidst all the hard work that the contractor is doing here to build the project, we also have Hazen providing excellent CA services to support the project. And so perhaps two of the biggest categories of work that they're providing for the project are submittal reviews, which were up over 2,000 through the end of the second quarter, and then requests for clarification where we're approaching 500 on the project through the end of the second quarter. So they've been busy as well. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the status of the project. So this is my standard kind of pre-construction view. So if you roll back the clock 3 years, this is what we'd be looking at for the project here back to August of 2020. And then a snapshot of the status here through the end of the second quarter. So we've picked up a couple of more green areas here through the end of the second quarter. Those have been at the EQ vault and remaining portion of the ISPS. And then we've also picked up 3 additional areas in commissioning through the end of the second quarter. That's the BRB, 1 chemical building at large, and then also the electrical building. And then we've also picked up or started construction in the second quarter at the membrane building, just the very beginnings of construction in the second quarter here. So things are moving along. We are seeing progress here quarter over quarter with the construction. And then I don't want to forget about our yard piping and our concrete. So we have put in the ground about 3 miles of large diameter yard piping, and then we've also placed about 1,700 yards of concrete on the project. So this doesn't, 17,000, sorry, 17,000 yards of concrete. And so this picture doesn't really indicate that, but that work is all complete so far. Yes, sir. Okay. So moving on to some of the areas of progress here. At the left here, this is our new equalization tank and vault, and this was green on the last slide. I just want to point out that this work is it's finished. We've taken ownership of it. It's all fenced in and secure. Access road is complete. and all of the building work and construction work is complete here, and we even have grass growing. So this is one of the larger, areas of concrete placement and the biggest new structure on the project. And so we are complete with this. This is up in the northeast corner of the facility. And then if we move over here, looking south, we're kind of at the north end of the facility. Just want to point out that this is the contractor's storage yard, and so their materials and equipment have certainly dwindled over the past quarter here. If you took a look at this yard, a year ago or more, it was jam-packed with materials and equipment. So things are getting built, materials and equipment are being put in place. And then the last view I have for you is we're up at the northwest corner of the facility. And I just want to call out here that construction is continuing here with the screen and grit and clarifier building expansion. The footprint, the final footprint is actually complete. The concrete has been placed and those two buildings have been expanded, but we continue with other disciplines of work there, especially through the second quarter and beyond. And I'm going to get into that here in just a
Hey,
second.
Rick.
Yes.
Is it worth noting the upper left picture here, the EQ tank and associated work, that actually helps mitigate a lot of risk for Loudon Water. The completion of that portion of the project really mitigates the primary risks associated with this entire project. So having that finally substantially complete and behind us is a really great achievement for this contract.
Is it integrated with in production now?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It definitely gives us some buffer or margin with flows to be able to accommodate some of the later work and specifically the membrane work, which is, I mentioned there, we just got started with that in the second quarter, and we're well into it now here in the third quarter. All right, so just looking at some of the architectural work here. So at the primary clarifier building, this is the south face of the expanded portion, and so we are architecturally complete there. It looks like it did 3 years ago when we had to take the brick off the face of the building. And same thing with the west face of the clarifier building. We are complete architecturally there as well through the end of the second quarter. And then on the north face, they were just wrapping up the brickwork. But if you looked at the clarifier building now from any side, it looks like it did 3 years ago when we started construction. And then moving inside the primary clarifier building. So over the second quarter, still progressing with mechanical and electrical work at HVAC, air handling units and ductwork and natural gas piping installed here in this picture, process piping and pumps over here. We're into electrical power and control wiring being installed in this photo here. And then on the right here, this is inside the clarifier tanks. And I'll just point out that the contractor had just gotten started with the chain and flight mechanism, and some of the support components for that are up here at the top here. They just got started with that. That's a mechanism that allows us to collect scum from the top of the water surface elevation in the clarifier, and then also collect sludge from the bottom of the clarifier tank as well. And so it's a neat system. We should have some more progress through the third quarter and maybe a picture at the next quarterly update on that. And then over in the coarse screen and grit building, very similar story to the primary clarifiers. We have pumps being installed, grit pumps and the grit classifier being installed here. We've got the new mechanical bar screen getting ready for installation here. A couple different views of that, and also the washer compactor that takes the bar screen solids and washes and compresses those as well. And then just one other thing on the in the screen and grit building, we also have an additional channel where we put a manually cleaned bar screen just as a placeholder until we put the mechanical equipment in a subsequent project, which will be under phase 3. And so I'm also going to take you now over to our odor control process. And so we wrapped up construction of that area of work here in the second quarter. And primarily that includes this new prehumidification scrubber right here to the south, and then this fifth biofilter cell as well. And so during the second quarter, we completed the coating in the biofilter cell, and then we also put the floor system in, which holds the media. And then we added the media into the biofilter. And so we used in this middle picture here, we used this belt conveyor system to feed the media into the biofilter. And then on the lower right here, there's a picture of the final biofilter with its media in place and also its spray system in there as well, just right before we put the covers on. The covers went on just right at the end of the second quarter there for the biofilter. And now we're into the commissioning of the new biofilter in the third quarter. Any questions there? Oh. Yes.
I'm thinking, should I ask this? The odor control progress for this particular site here, what I want to ask is, like in terms of proximity and radius, like what area does it really control? You know what I mean?
Okay, so
I'm trying to, and I hope I'm asking the right question.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question.
so the odor control system, it covers the entire facility, the entire plant.
Okay.
And so like for perspective, right here, we're at the south end of the facility. So kind of if you were to move in this direction, we'd be over at the DCH if this picture were to continue.
Okay.
Where we are right now. And so so the odor control system, it covers the entire Broad Run facility.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
So there's duct work within each building and within the tankage and so forth, and it's piped underground to this facility where it's run through this BioRim product.
Yeah. Honestly, the reason why I ask is because sometimes, you're in certain areas in Loudoun County and you get odor, like, and staying on the board. I was like, I'm just.
So I'm just gonna say, we get calls about odor and it's usually not us, right? Like it'll be a stormwater pond or something on Broad Run, like.
I knew you guys were gonna laugh
You
when I
don't
say
smell
that. because I was
anything
like-
when you came in this morning, right? It's not.
Yeah, it does a really good job. Our system does very well to
Yeah, so
control odors.
I recently, I think a year or two ago, like I just kind of like started getting odor, like, when you go to certain areas, I'm like, okay, this is kind of stinky, but so that's the reason why I was asking as well, because obviously you sit on the board, you don't want that, so yeah. Like we're putting, yeah.
I don't want to take a slap at another utility, but you have to go by Blue Plains to find out where there's no odor control, or at least it's not working.
Yeah. I would like to learn more about that later, but that's not in the scope right now. So we'll talk about that later. Okay, thank you. Please continue.
I live
Thank you.
close enough to this facility that if there was an odor problem, I would definitely know it.
Okay. So at our solids building, the construction work through the second quarter is very similar to the screen and grit and clarifier building, with virtually all the trades or craft disciplines going on. We have pump installations, process piping, motorized valves, a sludge storage hopper, and other things as well. But in particular, I just wanted to share with you this picture here. So this is one of the new centrifuges, and it's kind of progressive here. On the left here, you can see the rotating assembly of the centrifuge being hoisted above. And then in the center here, it's being set into the casing of the centrifuge. And then on the right here, you can see kind of the closed centrifuge. And on the end of the unit, here are the motors or the drives that will rotate or spin the rotating assembly here. And so just wanted to share with you, that's certainly something as well that was advanced during the second quarter, the installation of centrifuges. We have 2 of them going in the project. All right. And then the last area of work that I'll talk about is the electrical building. So during the second quarter here, we completed or mostly completed the commissioning of the electrical building. And just to refresh your memory here, so in the electrical building, we added a new 4th generator and the supporting HVAC equipment that goes with that, and then a brand new generator control system. And so as part of the commissioning of that, on the trailer here, we have a load bank and a transformer that were utilized during the testing of that 4th generator. And then over on the right, we have the replacement of a circuit breaker. So this is a medium voltage switchgear cabinet, and on this rack assembly is a circuit breaker that the staff here are putting back into the cabinet here. This is around 13,200 volt cabinet here, or switchgear. And then just in the center here, this is just a picture of our SCADA, or our operator interface terminal here over at the electrical building. This was used extensively and reviewed and optimized and tuned and tweaked extensively during the commissioning of the new generator control system. Yes.
So who did we commission this to do? Who was commissioned to do this? The electrical work? We subcontractors?
So it was largely installed by Singleton Electric, which is the electrical subcontractor on the job.
Okay.
And then Cummins had a huge role in the commissioning of it,
Yeah.
right? Because it was their generator
Mhm.
and their control system. And so they were out on site many days during the commissioning.
And we on the board approved this. Right?
Yes, we did several years ago. Yeah.
Thank you. Certain years like 2019, 2020?
Let's see. So the contract was awarded in 2020.
Okay.
I think it was June of 2020.
Okay.
And so it was, everything was officially approved back then. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to also tip my hat to Loudon Water staff for this particular work, because during this commissioning, we had several shutdowns, or partial plant or full plant shutdowns that were absolutely necessary to perform the commissioning. And they also at times impacted this building as well. And so I just want to tip my hat to Loudon Water staff, who are very accommodating, very supportive, and very helpful during this, because there was some disruption with these power system tests, but we did get through it, and we did get through it successfully. So
The other thing that's noteworthy is that I think the safety record has been outstanding. With all of the massive amount of work dealing with some of that electrical equipment, I haven't heard of any
yeah,
accident.
there were no injuries or accidents.
I mean, I shouldn't say that, but not good, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add to what Rick was saying, our limited plant electrician team was supportive of this the entire month of June, providing 24-hour coverage to the plant in the event that something was amiss. And the dedication out here has been incredible, not only for this, but to help with a lot of obstacles on this contract. It's been all hands, and I think it's contributed to our success out there. So it's been
How do
great.
we recognize the staff to let them know that we appreciate their effort?
Yeah,
mean-
I think we have a couple of ideas out there, so we'll absolutely let you know about that.
Okay. Any other questions on the electrical work? Okay, so that's the last of my specific areas of the project that I'm going to feature the progress on. And then we'll go here to our common slide here, just a couple things to go through administratively. We continue to have a lot of paperwork and utilize the the tools in the contract to facilitate good communication between the parties, the contractor and the owner, Loudon Water. So we continue to process our RFIs or RFCs and shop drawings and notices. Continuing to meet permit, the project has not directly caused a permit violation so far. So that is very positive. We do continue to keep a list of construction quality issues and try to keep that list contemporaneous with the contractor. So far, we have been able to resolve disputes and claims on the project. And then on our schedule here, we are still trending late. We're about 6 months late here, or the schedule is showing us to be about 6 months late at this point in the project. And then change orders, I mentioned, we added 1 change order to the mix at the end of the second quarter. So we've executed 12 now on the project.
Is there a particular reason why it's late? Anything? Is it supply problems or whatever?
I think it's kind of a myriad of things. That supply chain could be one cause. Just contractor, the contractor has just struggled at times to kind of meet their schedule and hit their marks, and so that's kind of one cause as well. I guess in the past we've called that contractor inefficiency, maybe, but for lack of a better term. But I think that's always kind of a factor on these projects. But probably those are probably the two biggest things that we could point to is just the supply chain challenges early on, and then just general inefficiency in some areas, and at sometimes.
When you step back from the project, though, and the fact that it was, awarded when it was right at the outset of COVID, I think we're not letting up by any means, but I think we've done a great job, and that goes to Rick and his team, and as I mentioned earlier, the operations team. It's been this core focus of let's make sure we're not creating any inefficiencies for the contractor, or we are doing all that we can to remove obstacles that would hinder the schedule. So just wanted to point that out. I think, we're continuing to make up ground and doing everything we can to mitigate this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and here too, I totally support what you're saying, because my spouse, he's electrical engineer, and his first job was at Cummins. We were in Minneapolis for about 17 years, so headquarters for Cummins is in Minneapolis. So the reason why I mention that is because to support your claim, when we took on this project here at Loudon Water, we had chips issues, we had semiconductor issues, and then sometimes contractor inefficiencies is not based on their skills or experience or their timeline. It's also because of supply too. So sometimes when we say contractor inefficiencies, we forget the fact that it may not be them per their labor, but it may be through, supply or any other issues that we were dealing with at the time too. So that I totally understand. Yeah.
One other thing that's great. We appreciate that insight. And Rick and his team, they've also been really diligent about anticipating this and managing the CA services accordingly. So, we're taking a very close look at this. I can assure you of that.
So Cummins, I do know they're one of the leading, institutions that we have that deals with these projects, and they have a really gold star seal of approval. They do, yeah. So,
They did very well for us.
They did. I know they do a great job. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, but overall, in general, I think the contractor's doing a good job, and it's been a tough project. This is a retrofit project that touches pretty much all of the facility. And so I think they've done an admirable job. And just one thing I'll mention that I have mentioned in the past is we have coordination and shutdown requests where the contractor asks or requests permission to impact part of the facility or the plant. And so so far we've had over 500 of those on the project. individual requests for different impacts or shutdowns of the facility. And so, I mean, we're certainly working with the contractor to help facilitate the project as best we can from our side of things,
Yeah.
while still, upholding the terms of the contract.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's,
And mechanical too, because there's paneling systems involved in there. There's, power generation, transformers, so many of the mechanical programming also has to be right too. So,
right.
yeah, it's
So-
very complicated.
Yes.
So you guys do an excellent job, but I'm glad we brought out the fact that the plant personnel, without their cooperation, you guys might not be doing as good a job as you think.
You're right. They have been a huge support
Okay.
on the project. I mean, most of these coordination and shutdown requests involve them in some
Yeah.
capacity where they have a supporting or facilitating role in those shutdowns or in those points of coordination. And so absolutely, plant staff has been huge on the
We should do
project.
something to commend them some.
Okay, yep, that brings us to nearly the end here. We've just got our summary of our active construction projects. We've got our contract time related data here on the left, and then our contract price related data here on the right on these projects. And I think most of these we talked about, but some of the ones I think at the very bottom are just got started with construction, so they weren't featured in this presentation, but they are all, every one of these projects is under construction.
Well, the only thing that strikes you is for the expansion, the percent time complete is 72%, but we've spent 83%.
Correct, and
Should be the other way around.
well, so this is, again, this number is based on final completion. And so substantial completion happens 6 months prior. And so if you base that percentage on substantial completion, it would be 82%. So it's just, the 72% is a little bit more of a stretched out version of, of the time. And I think on these quarterly updates, we've kind of been in the habit of basing the time statistics on final completion. But yeah, it's 82% based on substantial.
And Rick, I believe this project has a longer period from substantial to final than most of our other
It
projects,
does.
which then accentuates a little bit the.
Yeah, there's 6 months between substantial and final. So substantial is due next February, final is due next August of 24.
Typically, it's 30 days.
Yeah. And then I'll just advance one slide. We do have one project here. This particular project has been approved by the board. It's just that our construction start date hasn't occurred yet. So it's on the upcoming list just because we haven't begun construction yet. But this one has been approved and it will start here in a month or two.
When will the quarry project be on the upcoming construction projects?
We talked a little bit about that. The trend for these presentations has been to list the projects that are going to start in the upcoming quarter, so Q3. Right now, Milestone Reservoir is scheduled to start construction late November.
Mhm.
And so that sort of puts it outside of the normal sort of internal
I was
reporting
just curious.
window.
That's another big project.
It'll definitely be on the, and yeah, there's an anticipation that we will, of course, bring action items to the board in the fall for approval of construction and skiing services for that contract.
It's a very timely one to be thinking about right now with the drought going on. So appreciate you bringing that
Yes,
up.
indeed.
So that really brings me to the end here. Any other questions?
My only question is, how do you guys keep the change order percentage to such a low amount? Just a general question.
We just, just
Yeah,
try to be as,
crystal clear.
yeah, as fair and equitable as we can, you know.
All right.
From somebody who processed a lot of change orders.
Well, I've told them a number of times, when I was at Fairfax, we didn't have a percentage that low. We never even came close, and we thought we were doing good. So there's something going on here. Okay, if that's it. Tom, capital spending monthly report?
Yes. So good morning, everybody. Nathan, if you could bring up, if you could just maybe blow up the graph. Two items to talk about today real briefly. The first one here is the capital spending, and this is through July. So right in the center of the graph, you see the most recent actual, the red rectangle in the month of July. So through July, there was about $43 million of a projection of about 53 million. So the spending actuals are at about 80 or 81% through July of what was projected. The second part is going to be, I'll just mention, is the dashed line that you see added to this graph in red. That is a graph of the reforecasted spending for the second half of the year. So over the last month, we've asked all of the project managers to look at all of their original projections for the year and reproject what they believe now the spending will be through the end of the year. And so this dashed line is the new forecast. And Nathan, if you would switch over to the top of the second page. Yeah, and I'll go briefly through just the variance in this reforecast. So the $112.7 million, that was what the board approved for capital spending for this year. And you can now see that based on the mid-year reforecast that was done, we now project that at the end of the year, the total spending will be just under $91 million, $90.8 million. So that is a variance of about $22 million, $21.9 million, or about 20% of the original budget. So I mentioned that in July, we've spent about 43 million of the original projected 53 million, and that's about 80% spent. The projection is that by the end of the year, we'll have spent about 80% of what the original budget was. So we expect spending should kind of stay at the similar trend. You can see the reasons. There's 4 reasons in the variance. Projects that are either behind schedule or delayed make up about just under 20 million of the total 21 million, and you can see the other categories there. I'll just mention that the third one, the completed projects with excess budget in 2023, that's just shy of $7 million. And since the total variance is 21.9 million, the 7 million makes up about a third of the total variance. And that 7 million there, the completed projects with excess budget, you can see the budget impact is that money will not be needed in future years. So it was basically over forecasting of what the costs were. So that makes up about a third of the variance. The other 2/3 is money that was projected to be spent this year and is not going to be spent this year, but it is just getting it deferred. It will be in next year's reforecast, and most of that 20 or $15 million will end up as 2024 spending in the projection for next year. So that's really just a look at the reprojection of 90.7 for the end of the year rather than the 112.7. And if there's any questions, yes.
Yeah, so that approximate 7 million almost, that goes in our reserve funds, right? So how is that access of almost 7 million, how is that utilized?
That just
stays in our general fund to be.
The
used
reserve
in the
funds,
future.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And when it says in the reserve fund, Carla, like, so how do we utilize that when it's in the reserve fund?
Well, we only have one fund
Yeah.
at Loudon Water, and we have two sources of revenue, right? So we have
Yeah.
our operating revenues and our availability charges.
Yeah, availability.
And I'm going out on a limb to say that most of that 7 million is probably for expansion capital. So, it's just availability fees that we didn't spend. It's
Okay.
not anything to do with debt or anything. It just
Right.
is really allowing us to fund more projects going forward
Mhm, mhm.
without having to borrow money
Okay,
to do it.
perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for the assist, Carla. Okay, if there's no other questions, then thank you.
Thank you. Doesn't look like there's anything else on the agenda unless somebody wants to bring something up. That's it. Since it's quiet, do I have a motion to adjourn? I second that motion. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.